Hey everyone, I'm Armor Gaming, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a monster analysis on Nabuline. Now unfortunately the monster wiki, it hasn't been updated yet with the new monsters. However, SocialPoint has released the stats and the skills of these new monsters, so let's get right into this analysis. Nabuline boasts an impressive life stat of 38,906. This is impressive even in the Earth category, where the tankiest monster is Corella Brutalis, the recent released team race monster, who has a life of 44,335, after Brutalis is Oros, who has 40,112, and now is Nabuline. And again, this is so interesting because, you know, Brutalis and Oros, they are tanks. This monster is not a tank. Look at her, she's a tiny monster who is actually very, very tanky. And then her power is 3,421, which really isn't all that impressive, and it honestly doesn't even matter considering she is not an attacker by any means. She's actually a denier, which leads us to her speed stat. 3,531. This is an insanely fast monster. In the Earth category, this is the second highest speed stat. The highest speed stat belongs to Itsunami, who has a speed stat of 3,586, although that monster is more of a support monster. She can trade disable, she can apply nanovirus, so she's not going to be denying anyone. Actually, tied with Nabuline's speed is Zamillion, who's another support monster, although he does have a turn transfer skill, so that's worth mentioning. But Nabuline is officially the fastest Earth denier. Next up would be Baba Yaga, who has a speed stat of 3,498, so Nabuline has officially displaced Baba Yaga. Now here's the interesting thing about this monster, even if she wasn't the fastest Earth denier, she has a trait that is like unparalleled to any other monster. She's immune to control effects. So she can't be stunned, she can't be mega stunned, she can't be frozen, mega frozen, she can't be possessed, mega possessed. You cannot deny this monster by conventional denial means. Obviously you can still total blind, obviously you can trade disable then deny, but if you're just trying to AoE deny or something, it's not going to work against Nabuline, which is really cool. Now I would kind of compare this with having a dodge area trait. You know, those monsters that have currently been released that they are not affected by AoE skills. There's like plus and minuses to this specific skill. I mean, she's not the first monster to have it. Jelotron, I believe, was the first monster to have this, although Jelotron is an attacker, whereas once again Nabuline is a denier. The cool thing about having this control immunity is that you're protected from single attacks and AoE skills, right? Now you still take damage and you'll still take effects from torture effects, but I would still say it's very similar because I think that's how most people use the dodge area trait. They use it so that they can get a guaranteed turn in. So even if you're in a situation where you have Nabuline, but you're facing an opponent that's super fast, it can even be a Thalassa, level 130 Thalassa with level 10 runes, you do not have to worry about getting mega frozen. Now, obviously with Thalassa, she can trade disable then mega freeze you, but that's just an example, right? If you fight a Kihaku that's level 130, rank 5, he can try to possess and stun you, possess and freeze you, my bad. It's not gonna work against you because you are completely immune to control effects. So like just starting off, she has a really tanky life, she has an incredible speed stat, and she has an amazing trait. And then moving on to relics, it gets even better. She can hold the staff relic or the trap relic. And as we all know by now, the Trap Relic is one of the best relics a monster can hold. If you put an Oblation Trap and her HP falls below 50%, she's going to be draining all of the enemy stamina essentially, depending what level your Oblation Trap is at. And with the staff, you have so much versatility. If you have Cane of Atlantis, you can recover all of your team's stamina if you ever get stamina drained, whether by a monster or by another relic. Or you can even remove random stamina from an enemy monster with a Revenge Staff. Or you can even have an Oblation Staff yourself, which removes stamina from the enemy. So there are so many nifty combinations you can do with the staff and trap relics. And as for books, this monster is in the Adventures book, Good Legions book, and the Female book, so she has quite the variety there. And then with all that said, let's talk about skills, starting with tier 1 skills. Lack of Sunlight deals 40 damage, has no cooldown, and it costs 25 stamina. This skill deals moderate earth damage to one enemy and applies damage reduction. That's not worth running. Seismic Activity deals moderate earth damage to one enemy, but it has a 50% chance of applying stun to all enemies. So it's single target in terms of damage, but AoE effect, and it's only a 50% chance to stun. Now, a skill like this may potentially be worth running in the right scenario, right? If you have a teammate that can apply the guard down, or if you have guard down to the enemy team, or if you have an ally that can give you precision, maybe if you have War Master Charizard that gives the true vision to all of his teammates, like things like that, you can maybe utilize this skill. However, if we look at tier 2 and tier 3 skills, there are way superior skills. However, this next skill could potentially be worth talking about, Going Down the Cave. This skill deals no damage, has a 2-turn cooldown, it only costs 16 stamina, but it removes 50% of stamina from all of the enemy monsters. And it's one you might potentially be utilizing with another skill, specifically from Skills Group 2. So let's get into Skills Group 2. We have Underground Hawes, which applies a 50% life shield to one ally, and applies damage mirror to one ally, requires cooldown. Once again, no damage, 1 turn cooldown, 19 stamina cost. As we can see, the skills, they don't necessarily cost too much stamina. Anyhow, I don't think this skill is necessarily worth running, so let's move on to the next one. Sisyphus Boulder removes 50% of stamina from all enemies and applies Stamina Leak to all enemies. So this is definitely an upgraded version from the tier 1 skill. The cooldown is, however, 1 turn higher, has a 3 turn cooldown, but the cost is 3 less stamina. It only costs 13 stamina, 50% stamina AoE drain, and it applies Stamina Leak. Whereas the tier 1 skill is just a 50% stamina leak or 50% stamina drain to all enemy monsters. You could use the skills back to back, and then the enemies are going to have to recharge. And then the Stamina Leak, that's just icing on the cake, right? It drains 15% of stamina for the next 3 turns from the enemy monsters. So even when they recharge, they're still losing stamina. So I really like Boulder. I think that's a definite must-have. Going down on the cave, I think that's a skill you could swap out with other skills for specific battles if you know you just need to constantly be draining the enemy's stamina. And then the final skill we have in tier 2 is Ore Extraction, which deals heavy earth damage to one enemy and applies Mega Stun to one enemy. In this case, heavy earth damage means 50 damage, has a 2 turn cooldown, and it only costs 26 stamina. What I really like about this skill is the fact that it's single targets. Single target Mega Stun. I think this is very vital for all control monsters to have in the current meta of Monster Legends, where more and more monsters are being released with the dodge area trait, or more and more monsters being released that have a skill that can apply dodge area rather to themselves or to a teammate. The reason this is important is because there are going to be times where you're going to be facing a team where your AoE deny isn't going to work, right? If you're facing a Nabuline and you're facing a monster that has dodge area, there's no point in doing an AoE, you might as well single target. So you'll single target the monster with dodge area. So just to give you an example, let's say you have Sammy on your team and you're facing a Shade Moon. Shade Moon is like Sammy's worst nemesis. Shade Moon can apply Spirit Hater and kill your Sammy, potentially OTK. And if you try to AoE deny Shade Moon, you can't, because he has the dodge area status caster from the start of the battle. So what you can do with Nabuline is instead single target that Shade Moon, deny him for 2 turns, and then your Sammy's safe. So definitely moving on in the game, more and more the single deny is going to be super important, and they're even better when they're not just stun, freeze, or possession, but when they're the mega versions, when they deny the enemy for 2 turns. So Ore Extraction, a definite must-have. And if you don't want to keep it on your main skill set, it's definitely a must-have when you're facing a monster that has the dodge area trait. And moving on to the final skill set 3, we have Dwarven Protection, deals very heavy earth damage to one enemy, applies a 25% life shield to all allies, requires cooldown. Here, very heavy earth damage means 55 damage, 2 turn cooldown, 19 stamina cost. Now, while I do like that this does give a shield to your teammates, and sometimes you do need some sort of shield, I wish the percentage would have been higher, maybe like a 50% life shield, or I wish the cooldown would have been less, maybe a spammable skill. Because the one thing this monster doesn't have going for her is that she doesn't really have a spammable skill, with the exception of Lack of Sunlight from skills group 1. And considering you are Earth Monster and you are facing Montezuma, and a lot of players do have Montezuma ranked up, you could come into a situation where you get cooldown activated from the get-go. So I would have loved a spammable skill. You know, I think of War Master Remtar a lot, who has a spammable skill that applies a 33% life shield to all of your allies. I use that all the time, especially when I face Timerions and such. So Dwarven Protection, while I like the shield, I really wish it would have been more of a life shield, or I really wish the cooldown would have been like 0, so it could have been spammable. But nonetheless, it's a skill you could utilize if you find yourself needing some sort of life shield in the battle. Moving on, we have Stone Coffin, which removes 100% stamina for an enemy. Once again, these single target skills are vital. They are so vital that they are definitely worth running. Here, it deals no damage, 2 turn cooldown, 16 stamina cost. The stamina cost is very low, 100% stamina drain if you can control an enemy. If you're facing another Nabuline, yeah, drain all of her stamina, since you can't immobilize her anyways. And then moving on to the last skill, we have Rock Knuckles. This skill, if you notice, deals 40 damage, has a 2 turn cooldown, but it does cost a hefty 59 stamina. We have not seen that. Everything else has been around 30 or like way below 20. But 59 stamina, let's see what this skill does. Deals moderate earth damage to all enemies, applies stun to all enemies, applies stun to all enemies, applies quicksand to all enemies, requires cooldown. Yes, that's right, it applies stun to all enemies twice. So more often than none, it is going to be landing on all of the enemy monsters if they're not immune to stun, right? It doesn't matter if the enemy is hardened, it doesn't matter if the enemy has bulwark, it doesn't matter if the enemy has tough. Because you're double stunning, one of those stuns is going to land, if not both of them. And on top of that, you apply quicksand. This is by far one of the best skills I have seen. It is double deny, same thing, both stun. It applies the torture effect quicksand, one that not a lot of monsters, not hardly any monster are immune to. It's just a fantastic skill on a super fast monster. On a monster who, on top of being able to AoE stun, can single 100% stamina drain, can single mega stun, can just AoE 50% stamina drain and stamina leak. And if I'm not mistaken, because the stamina leak, like Boulder, because it deals no damage, I don't believe enemy relics would activate. So it is just, looking at skill sets, this is a phenomenal monster. Skills group 3 is incredible. So if I was to give you a skill set for this monster, Rock Knuckles for sure, Stone Coffin or Extraction, and Boulder. That would be your 4 skills, but again, you could swap out depending on what you need. Do you need the Life Shield skill? Do you foresee yourself needing it? Do you want going down the cave from tier 1 skills? Like, just, you can modify it to your liking, but definitely Rock Knuckles, that's your must-have skill that you're probably going to start off most battles with. Boulder is probably going to be your next skill used in battles. 50% stamina drain from everyone and stamina leak, or maybe you'll do Stone Coffin to 100% stamina drain a single enemy monster. But once again, fantastic monster. And then we can still talk about the ultimate, Gravitational Tsunami. 60 damage, and this skill deals very heavy earth damage to all enemies, applies Mega Stun to enemies, applies total damage reduction to enemies, and applies a 50% life shield. There's that 50% life shield. What I like about this is that it is an AoE Mega Stun, but on top of that, if an enemy monster was immune to stun, they get a total damage reduction. So if that enemy monster that didn't get stunned is an attacker, at least their next attack isn't going to be dealing damage. So overall, Nabuline is by far one of the best earth monsters we've seen. She's incredibly fast, she has a super tanky life stat, even though she doesn't look like she would. She has really great relics, she has one of the best traits in the game, she cannot be hit with control skills, she has a really great skill set, and low stamina cost with the exception of Knuckles, but I mean 59 stamina for a skill like that, that's warranted. So that has been my monster analysis on Nabuline, and now I want to hear from all of you guys. What do you guys think about this monster? Oh, and it goes without saying, this is a 3-speed monster, right? Give her your absolute best speed runes. Okay, and then with that being said, now I want to hear from all of you guys. Let me know what you think about this monster in the comments below. What kind of synergy do you see herself working with? What kind of team combinations? How effective of a monster do you think she is in the Adventures book, in the Good Legions book, or in the Female book? Do you think she can dominate one of the top spots in those categories? Is there one category she'll dominate more than others? Whatever thoughts you may have, please let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you all next time.